Welcome to Beautifully Restored. I'm Melissa Stewart, and this is a personal growth podcast on using your setbacks for success. I was once a Baptist pastor's wife whose huge fall from grace left me feeling alone, completely ruined, and without hope. Join me as I interview people with some amazing stories of restoration. Plus, I will share my own journey of fighting back to a place in life where I now run several successful businesses, am raising two incredible kids, found love again, and no longer identify with my past mistakes. Because it's not about where you've been, it's about where you are going. Casanova Brooks, welcome to my podcast, Beautifully Restored. Super excited to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Mel. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Hopefully looking forward to giving some value and hearing some feedback from somebody that this had an impact on their life.
Heck yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're coming to us right now from Omaha, Nebraska, but
That's
you're from
right.
Chicago, Illinois.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. I'm wearing my Bears. Are you a Bears fan, even though they suck?
I am. That was the first thing that I noticed, but at the time I could only see the Bears symbol. Yeah. I couldn't see anything underneath it. So I wasn't sure if it was like a high school team or something else, but yeah, I am a Bears fan. These last couple of seasons have not been the greatest of years for us. We won't get into that because obviously there's people on here that want to listen for value and not talk about the Bears.
Yeah, we got to keep it positive.
Right.
I need to ask you though, are you Southside Chicago? Are you White Sox or are you Cubs fan?
Southside of Chicago. Yeah. So White Sox.
I had a feeling, I don't know, just your energy. I had a feeling. Well, I do follow the Cubs, but it's a fun town. Super cool that all that goes on there. Great. Chicago's great. You get back there very often?
Yeah. So my uncle and my grandmother still live there. So we go back there at least once a year, try to do twice a year, but at least once a year, we try to get back to Chicago. They live out in Naperville. My cousin though, who I'm very, very close with, she lives in still inner city, south side of Chicago. So we get back there at least once a year.
Nice. What do you miss most about the city?
To be honest, I think the thing that I love the most is in the summertime and the springtime. Like I think Chicago is an amazing city when it's not snowing. So for me, I always think about the things that I did, which was there's so much to do in Chicago. Like have you ever did something called, which is off topic, but anybody who's been to Chicago, they maybe can relate. Have you ever did something called whirly ball?
No, never done a whirly ball.
So next time you go there, if you love like family events, and you told me how old your kids were, so this could be great, but basically it's like bumper cars, but look it up even on Instagram where you can like hashtag whirly ball, WHIRLYBALL. And so it's like bumper cars, but you also have a little scoop, and then you have a wiffle ball that basically you're in a bumper car, and it's two teams. So it's like, I think 4 on each team, and you're trying to go score at this hoop, and somebody else is trying to go score at the other hoop. And the hoop is just made out of a backboard, like a wooden backboard that's up on the wall, and then it has a circle in between. So you got to take your wiffle ball and you got to throw it up in there. But while you're doing it, you're focused on driving the go-kart or the bumper car, and then somebody else is coming and they're swiping at you, and it's just really, really a fun time. And so I would encourage you next time you go to Chicago, if you're looking for like a family event or something like that, it's different. Now, obviously with COVID, who knows what they're allowing for or whatnot, but that's one of the things I really miss the taste of Chicago, because I'm a big foodie, so I love that. And just all the things that you can do in Chicago. There's no shortage of ways that you can get out and you can really experience the world. So that's the thing that I would say I miss, but I do not miss the cold, even though I'm here in Omaha, so it's still cold. But Chicago, as we know it, is a different type of cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that lake effect. Oh, man, it is just the wind. Whew. It's brutal. So whirly ball. Okay, we're gonna do us some whirly ball maybe this summer if they're back open again. So
yeah, you'll love it. Cool. Make sure you let me know because I'd love to hear your experience.
I will. Yeah, fun city to visit. I don't want to live there, but it's a fun city to visit. So I'm 2.5 hours from there, so it's not a bad drive. So what brought you to Nebraska? Tell the audience that doesn't know who you are or what you do. Tell us what you do. What brought you there? What's going on over there?
Yeah, so what brought me here, I guess it's very impactful to hear a little bit about my story and my journey, and I'm sure somebody right now might be able to relate to this. But I always say, and especially, I know the show's called Beautifully Restored, right? So what I think I've been a person who's been restored many a times in my life. And so looking back, I'm originally from southside of Chicago, raised by a single mom. My dad was never in my life. I'm the only child on my mom's side. And so last I knew, I had 13 brothers and sisters on my dad's side. So I had a lot of brothers and sisters, but my dad never did anything to bridge the gap of the relationship. So I didn't really grow up with any of them. I grew up kind of by myself. And as I mentioned to a little bit earlier, I had a first cousin. We're 9 months apart. And she was basically my sister growing up because my grandmother, who stepped in to try to be that father figure in my life since I never had my dad, my grandmother, she had my mom, and then she had my uncle. My mom had me, and my uncle had my cousin. So that was how we really grew up together. So anyway, so I'm in Chicago, and for me, we never grew up with really about anything, right? So what do I mean by that? My mom would always say she was robbing Peter to pay Paul and just about everything that she was doing. And so she always tried to give me everything that she could, but we just didn't have a lot of anything, which was fine because at the time I didn't really know, right? Even if you're living in any type of poverty, you don't really know what it is because you see love, hopefully, and you see the other people that are around you that most likely your environment is conducive to what you're already getting, right? So anyway, I'm growing up in that. Then when I'm 8 years old, I really go through my first stint of adversity. And so what does that mean? I had my two best friends who we did everything together. We were the three musketeers, three pioneers, however you want to say it. And they came over one morning and they say, hey, we're about to go to the beach in Chicago. You want to come? And for whatever reason, I'm like, hey, you know what? Nah, I'm going to sit this one out. And they're like, all right, cool. We'll catch you later. Well, come to find out a couple hours later, they both wound up drowning off of the pier in Chicago that morning. So why I wasn't right there with them doing everything that they were doing, like normally, there's no rhyme or reason. I just say that God, my creator, somebody had a bigger purpose for my life and me still being here. So that was the reason why I sat this one out. And so it was absolutely crazy. But me as the 8-year-old boy, now I'm having to restore or reinvent myself because those are my guys. Those are the people who I was growing up with them, and now I had to make new friends. It felt like, in a sense, and on top of that, I'm still the only one here, so it feels like I'm a victim, right? It feels like people are, oh, how are you doing with this? How are you coping with this? And I'm like, I don't really know how to cope, but you guys are, I guess, inflicting a fear in me that I didn't necessarily even know that I had. So I had to figure out again how to cope with it, and fortunately enough, I was able to. And then fast forward to when I'm like 11 years old, my mom and grandma. Really, some of my cousins started to migrate to Sioux City, Iowa, which is about 8 hours away from Chicago, obviously to the west. And so my mom and grandma was like, hey, we're going to go check this out. And my grandma and I wound up going on a Greyhound and checking out Sioux City. Next thing I know, less than 2 weeks later, all of my stuff is being packed in a U-Haul. And my grandma says, hey, we're going to move you to Sioux City, Iowa, right? They're coming too, of course. My mom didn't really want to come, but she didn't have a choice because I'm her only child. So she kind of came kicking and screaming. And my grandma was like, yeah, this is the best opportunity for him because at this time, I'm being just really inundated in my environment with drugs, gangs, violence, everything that you see on TV. I grew up in one of the worst neighborhoods in the south side of Chicago and maybe even all of Chicago. And so I was like, okay, so now I'm moved to Sioux City, Iowa. So imagine, going from big city Chicago where people predominantly only look like me, right? I never saw anybody besides going downtown Harold Washington Library or something like that. So now all of a sudden I'm in a town of 80,000 people. There's cornfields and I see almost nobody who looks like me. And I'm like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do here? And what's crazy is I always say that there's a silver lining in everything, right? And the silver lining for me was it didn't allow me to grow up with an ignorant mindset. And so what do I mean by that? I was forced to not have the mindset that just because you didn't look like me didn't mean that you had to be against me and that there was no way you could be with me. Right. And so that was the kind of the silver lining because now I was forced to make relationships with so many different people. So I'm doing that. Pretty popular. Obviously, my name, things like that. I'm big into sports. So basketball, football, track, dance squad. We were 2-time national champions. So we went down to Texas, things like that. So things are going well. And then all of a sudden, I'm sophomore year in high school and football's just getting over and basketball starting. And I find myself having a hard time breathing. And I remember telling my buddies, like, as we're walking through the hallway, I'm like, man, I can't really breathe. And they're like, it's probably just because, football just got over, you left early, basketball's just starting, we're just starting to condition. And so you're probably just out of shape. And I'm like, yeah, you know what, you're probably right. Well, as I was going home, I was just taking naps. And my mom's like, hey, what's up with you? This is not like you. And I'm like, I don't really know. I'm just tired. And she's like, okay, well, if it persists, we're going to go to the hospital. was a couple days went on, it did continue to persist. And so we go to the emergency room one night and they say, hey, you know what? It's a little bit more serious and you're talking about breathing. So we're going to keep you overnight. Now, keep in mind at this time, I wasn't scared because all I had in my mind was growing up is that I was going to get a hot nurse. I was going to get a sponge bath and I was going to get ice cream and video games, right? Like that was it. Like I wasn't thinking of anything too crazy. So I'm like, all right, it'll be fine. But they came in later after doing tests and they're like, hey, we think it might be a little bit more serious. We're actually going to ship you to the other side of the state, which is at the University of Iowa in Iowa City, and we're going to do some more tests there. And then my mom like, well, what does it mean, like more serious? And I'm like, well, we think he might have cancer. And I just remember my grandma being like, whoa. And at this time, again, still I'm like, man, because keep in mind, I never ever was sick as a child. I never had chicken pox, measles, coronavirus. Like I was always good. Never broke a bone or anything. So I was like, okay, like I'll be fine. But obviously when I get there, I'm shipped there like 6 hours later. Now, next thing you know, I got tubes all hooked up to me. And then they put an emergency port in my chest connected to my jugular. And then over the next 2 years, I experienced just about anything that anyone else does when it comes to the C word. And I had chemotherapy for 2 years, and I just had to figure out how to navigate it. Now, how did I come through that? A lot of people always ask. I'll tell you, at the time, I didn't really know like what it meant. They did tell. I remember I was right there, and they told my mom that, you know, if he would have just waited 2 more weeks, he could have just died naturally, right? Because you would like that. It was stage 4, so it was all throughout my body. And it was just something that was so crazy. But what I did know is that I had 2 strong women that were leading the cause for me, right? They were leading the ship for me. And so they kind of lived by that, never let them see you sweat. And so I don't know how my parents were paying the bills because they didn't have any money, right? They were finding public assistance and anything that they could do to try to keep me alive. But all of those things just kind of led me to every single day putting my head down and just trying to get through the day. And so that was really all I had. And then so 2 years later, I'm now, you know, in remission, I'm cancer free, and I'm 17 years old, and I'm just about to graduate high school, I'm sorry, and go off to college. Now, another thing for me, and there's a short stint to this story. If you want to talk more about it later, we can, but I graduated at 17. Now I'll tell you, it wasn't because I was young for my age, right? So basically my birthday was 2 days behind the deadline in Chicago. And so when we went there, my mom tried to enroll me into kindergarten. They were like, sorry, like the deadline just cut off. But my mom fought like hell. And maybe it was just because who I was as a kid. She was like, there's no way you're going to keep this dude with me for another year. You're going to take this dude this year. He'll be fine. So I was always like one of the youngest in my class. So I graduated at 17, and this was big for me. And I say this because if any parents are out there, they can probably resonate with this. But it was probably 17 was the most trying year of my life, and the only reason why I say that, and I've had a lot of trying as we go through my story, but the only reason why I say that is because there was so much pressure on me at this time. I just came out of victimhood, where everybody was like, "Oh, are you okay? Are you tired? Are you sick?" To now, all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm cancer free, and then that pressure comes in of, Castle, what are you gonna do now that, you know, high school is about to be over? And obviously that's pressure for any 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid, because you then feel like you have to say, I'm going to go to college or I'm going to go to this trade. You just don't know. And that's not good enough, right? Like you got to figure something out. And so for me, I wound up going to University of Iowa primarily because that was where my physician was, right, when I was going through chemotherapy. So if it ever came back, I knew that I knew somebody who already knew my story and could help me. And so I wound up going there, and I got into college at 17, but I was lost in life. So I wound up changing my major 3 times within or 4 times within my first 3 years, right? And I only did 3 years at the University of Iowa, but 4 times. And the whole thing was I was lost. And so I say this to somebody to say, if you have a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, or even 18-year-old boy, girl, niece, nephew, son, daughter, it doesn't matter what it is, like, don't put that pressure on them to try to figure it out. Because for me, I think that I lost a little bit of myself with being in college because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I felt like that pressure was there that I had to figure it out. Right. And so that's kind of the thing that I would encourage anybody to really just think about those things. Allow somebody to be who they are. But anyway, so fast forward.
Let me just pause there, because would you recommend that they go to college then without declaring a major and maybe just go ahead and take, the required classes. And do you mean that, or do you mean, should they not go to college right away? Or, practically what advice would you give them besides just don't expect them to know exactly where they're going? What
Yeah.
they're doing?
Great question. I get asked this question quite a bit because I'm somebody that the life that I've been able to create now, it comes from having no degree. I still don't have a degree, right? And I don't have any aspirations to go back and even get it. But here's what I would say. So people ask me all the time if I'm going to pay for my kids to go to college, right? And I always say, I'm not looking to pay for my kids to go to college. Now, would I help them if they had the grades and that was their aspiration? Would I help them to get into college? Yeah, absolutely. Maybe even I would match them on like half of it to pay for their gen eds. But here's the thing that I would say first and foremost. The world that we live in today, whatever your passion is, you can be successful without a college degree on it. Most 90% of them. Now, if you say, hey, I want to go be an anesthesiologist, or I want to be a biomechanical engineer or something like that. If you say that you want to do something that the level playing field is having a degree for you to even be able to get in there, then yeah, let's really talk about that. But at the same time, I need to know that you're willing to put in the work to be able to make whatever this end result or dream is happen. Because so for me, if you would have asked me in the beginning, what did I want to do? I didn't really know. So me going to the University of Iowa, my first 2 years, I was just building relationships, which I would argue to say that is the best thing that you can ever have in the world of business or even life. Like your true currency of success and any success is the relationships that you have and how many of those relationships are meaningful. I've gotten into more doors because of the relationships that I have, especially in real estate, which obviously we can talk about that as well. But it's not because of what I knew, not even necessarily about who I knew, but more importantly, who knew me. Who was willing to put their stamp of approval on my name to say, hey, man, Casanova. Because if you think about it, and this is practical for somebody to listen to, if I come, let's say you're applying for a job and that person you just happened to know, you did some research and that person knew me, whether you found it through LinkedIn and it was a mutual connection or Facebook or whatever. You say, oh, you know Casanova? And they say, yeah, I know Casanova. Do you? You say, yeah, I definitely know Casanova. He's such a good guy. So you're trying to build rapport with whoever the decision maker or the owner is. And they say, okay, cool. So now all of a sudden that person reaches out to me and they say, hey, you know Mel? And I say, well, yeah, I mean, I kind of know Mel. I don't like know Mel, but she seems like she's an okay person, things like that. And they're like, oh, okay. What's your chances of landing that job or that opportunity?
Yeah,
Maybe 50,
great point. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you crushed it still and you had the expertise, you're 50-50. But if I say, oh yeah, Mel, I definitely know Mel. Listen, I don't know if I've known anybody else who's worked as hard as she has and done what she's done in this short amount of time. Trust me when I tell you, if you have an opportunity to get Mel on your team, you better jump on that because she is absolutely phenomenal.
The true story, Cass.
True story, right?
I heard you saying that. I'm just going to play that for everybody that needs to hear it. I like it.
Everyone. So, but now what's your chances of landing that opportunity?
Yeah, right. Big time. Yeah.
Big time, right? But it's about how you shown up. What are your values every single day? What was the energy that you brought into my lifestyle every single day? So it was never about what you knew. It was more about how you made me feel. Right? Every single time. Was you somebody that I could know that I could count on? We always talk about, especially in the world of finance and even real estate, people talk about credit. Like, I'm trying to get credit. Well, understand what really the word credit derives from, right? It's credibility. It's my trust in your ability to make payments, whatever the payments are, on time and over time. Do I trust that you're going to do what you said you were going to do every single time you said that you were going to do it? And it could be as small as making a connection, following up with me, right? Trying to provide whatever value that you said, oh yeah, I can definitely teach you how to do that. Okay, well, if you want me to mentor you, if you want me to help you or really be, again, a staple for your name, did you do all those things? Or can I look back and say, I don't know, they didn't show up those couple times. If I put my name on the line for them to build this relationship and it backfires, who does it backfire on? Me, right? So that's what I would say. First, figure out what are your gifts, because for like my son right now, and especially people that are going to have kids that are going to college over the next 5 years, CJ right now will tell you instantly when he grows up, he knows what he wants to be. He has so much conviction on it. What do you think he says that he wants to be?
I'm going to guess he wants to go into real estate.
No.
No.
No, I mean, he's 9. What do all 9-year-old kids want to
Well, I
be right
thought
now?
sometimes they want to do what their parents want. Okay, he wants to play professional sports.
That's the old way
Rock
of doing
star?
it.
I don't know. Business
He,
owner?
he wants to be a YouTuber.
Oh, a YouTuber. You're right. Oh my
Come
gosh.
on, that's the
So
world of like
cute.
all kids nowadays,
Yeah,
right?
it's so true.
I mean, he understands real estate. I take him with me on flips. I have videos out there, all the 9. He understands it. I
Awesome.
teach him about credit. I teach him about relationships as much as he can, comprehend at the age of
Mhm.
9. But yeah, the conviction in his heart, Dad, I know what I'm gonna be when I grow up. What are you gonna be? I'm gonna be a YouTuber. Like, and it's like, but you don't kill a dream, right? You
Right.
don't kill a dream. So that was going back to my whole point. Like, for me to try, no, son, you don't want to be a YouTube. The reality of it is there's kids out there that make more than you and I do off of YouTube,
All
and
right.
they're half our age, but because somebody allowed them to live in their gift and not put the pressure to say YouTube that won't work. Right. So again, just being okay with allowing that person to figure out who they are, because at the end of the day, you can't force, what's the word that I want to say? You can't force greatness, because that's what we all want to be. We want to be the greatest version of ourselves, and that's the greatness. You can't force someone else's greatness upon them. You have to let them be who they are. And that's definitely tough, because we feel like us as parents, as adults, we have all the answers, but we don't have all the answers because we didn't know what we knew now when we didn't know it, right? And so
Mhm.
that's the thing that I would say on the college thing. Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
that's really good. It's you probably follow Gary V because he's so big into that. Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
Uh, he's a really loud voice for that right now, and I feel like our society is transitioning into this new era where college degrees are not the end all be all. And whereas, when I grew up, that's what the focus was on. You're not going to get a good job unless you get a college degree. But I'm like you, Casanova. I don't have a college degree. And I'm making as good of money in my businesses that I'm running as a college grad. And I'll eventually make much more than many of them because there's no limit. Right. And so
Right.
that's a great point. And so I love that. And I think that as a parent, I'm the same way. I don't want to put that pressure on my kids to to go to college or not go to college. Like you
Yeah.
said, you got to let them discover for themselves. So, hey, if they want to be a YouTuber, let's go.
Let's go. And again, we asked people, it's like Malcolm Gladwell, right? Talking about the 10,000 hours if you're an outlier. You have to put your time into something. Put your time into something that at the end of the day you're going to have no regrets on. Because if you're forcing somebody to put their time into something that what you think they'll have, at the end of the day, they'll burn out on it that much quicker. We all are humans, and we can burn out on anything. It doesn't matter what it is. But again, if it wasn't what your choice was, and for some people it's not, college isn't. The other thing that I would say is look at what your gift is. Like if you're saying that, hey, I want to be a communicator. I want to have a TV show one day, right? Because that's what a lot of times when YouTubers, they want to have an audience, right? Well, you don't need to go to college to create an audience. What you need to figure out is who exactly are you talking to, and what is the exact problem that you solve for that person. Well, now in the world of YouTube, of Twitch, whether it's video gaming, some people just want to watch video games all day, CJ included. For the last 2 years, we've gotten him out of that to being more of a creator. But we see all these kids now. Remember back in the day, we would always play the video games. Yeah, as weird as it was. Now they just watch other kids play the video games, and it's like, just create it
Weird.
yourself. And
Yeah.
so again, just figuring out what exactly is their passion. And that goes for somebody else right now. Maybe if you're in a transition right now where you're like, I'm trying to figure out what it is that I'm good at, right? Well, ask yourself, what comes easy for you and that's harder for other people, right? Just what comes easy for you. It might be speaking, articulating yourself. It might just be your charisma. You might be able to be able to put a whole bunch of people in a room together, and you can put on events, whether they're virtual or whether they're live. Maybe that's your thing. It might be for you that you have a knack for design, right? So could you go out there? Could you put your profile on Upwork or any of these other resource sites like Fiverr or freelancer.com, and you can design things for people? Right? There's so many different ways. You might just say, you know what? I don't know that I'm gifted at anything. I just love hearing other people's stories. If you don't think that you can make $1 million or even close to $1 billion off of that, let me ask you, what exactly does Ellen do?
Right.
Right? That's what she does. She drinks coffee and hears some of the world's greatest stories. Now, of course, she uses her platform to be able to give people their message out to a bigger audience, but that's what they do. So there's something for everyone out there. You just have to figure out who are the people that I want to serve, and also what is the problem that I could solve for them, right? If you're like, okay, well, I'm in real estate. I don't want to always be selling houses. Okay, well, can you teach other real estate agents, right, how to get their systems better in order, right? Maybe it's on the accountant side or the CRM side, or maybe it's you're going to teach them how to have more confidence in themselves. Because I always say in the real estate world that people say, oh, we got a lack of leads. We don't have a lack of leads because there's leads all around us. What we have is a lack of confidence, lack of information, and a lack of strategy. Right? So those are all the things that I would say, no matter who you are right now, this is the greatest opportunity for you to be able to get whatever your gift is out there. And if you say, okay, well, I'm not gifted and I'm not an expert at anything. Well, even if you have a job right now, somebody is paying you to do something. So you're clearly gifted in something. You're just not paying yourself to do it. Somebody else is paying and then monetizing off of your ability to do it. Whereas if you did that exact same thing for yourself, think about how do they find the clients that come in and you service these clients. So that's all you do. Then you go out, you find the clients the same way that they do, but then you service the clients. And now you keep more of that money for yourself and you have more of that impact for yourself.
Heck yeah, I love that. That's great advice. And I think I think anybody of any age should ask themselves that if they're not feeling fulfilled in what they're doing. Ask yourself, what am I passionate about? What am I good at? And maybe it's helpful to ask those around you that you trust that are really there to support you, because you got to be careful. Not everybody in your circle is supportive, but you can also ask the people that are around you, what am I good at? If someone, if I was to ask you, like, when you look at me, what do you see me when I'm like in my zone and like my heart is just on fire? Like, what am I doing when I'm doing that? And then what do they tell you? Because sometimes we can't see that in ourselves.
Right. And the other thing is just look at what is the thing that you constantly research, right? Because a lot of times we're like, oh, we're afraid to put ourselves out there. But if you look at if you're truly passionate about it, most likely you can be pretty good at it, because all it takes is a couple steps for you to be able to learn how to generate a result, and then you go get a result for that person, whether it's free or paid, right? And if you don't, you're like, I don't know how much I could charge. Just go get a result for that person, and do it free for maybe the first 30 days. And then you say, hey, I appreciate you allowing me to help you with this, especially if it's like lead generation or helping somebody bring in more money, and say, I'm curious to know if you had to pay for this second month, right? How much would you pay for it? And maybe you say that up front. You say, hey, I just want to I'm just trying this experiment out. I want to see if I can generate a result off of this. And then the second month, if it works and you like it, then we'll have a conversation about if I could keep going, right? But there's no pressure because you're not charging them anything. You only want to help them. You're there to serve. So like, okay, cool, I'll try that. So you then try it, and in the second month, you're like, hey, I just wonder, how much would you pay for this? Just curious. And then they're going to tell you how much they would pay for it. And then you figure out, is that a valuable opportunity? Now, you already know this is your bottom dollar because someone's already told you what they're pay for that. So then you're like, okay, well, how could it be more valuable to you? Right? And if they say, well, if you would have did this or if you would have did that, then this would be crazy. Okay, well, if I could do those things, let me ask, how much would you pay for that? I don't know. That's kind of tough but I would probably pay an additional $1,000, right? If you could do that. So now you already know my bottom dollar was $1,000 a month, but if I can add in these two things, now I could get $2,000 a month. And then you go to somebody else who maybe you can depict what are all the things that worked that they liked about it. What are all the things that they didn't like about it? So now you start with what they didn't like about it and you make those pain points. Hey, are you experiencing this? Are you experiencing this and you hate when you have to do this? Because and that's your ad, right? That's what you're going to run. And that person will say, oh my God, that's exactly me. And you're like, well, we've created a solution for that. And then here's your solution, the first piece or the second piece that you put in there. And then you schedule a call, you talk to that person, and you say, hey, I know if you're like other business owners that I've helped or other people that I've helped in this exact niche, here's the other things that you might be thinking. And then they'll say this, and they're like, oh my God, you're talking to me. well, how much does it cost? And then you tell them, and maybe you even charge an additional $1,000 because you just want to see, would that person pay that? Now they probably would, because you already have talked their language and they know that you could solve a pain point. But it only started with you just for 30 days doing something for free, and maybe it's even 2 weeks. You're like, man, I don't have 30 days. I only got 2 weeks. Can you produce a result for that person in 2 weeks? Right? Or 1 week, whatever the time frame is, right? And make them feel better. Maybe it's you're selling a product, and if they get that product within 2 days, just like Amazon, people start taking it, and instantly in their mind and their energy, they feel like they're a different person. So like, I got to keep going with this. So it could be the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Some good market research stuff, right? I like that.
Right.
And people will always pay money to have someone help them solve their problem. So money will be exchanged if there's a problem to be solved, and you can show them that you can solve it. So you're in college after your fourth major change, the change of your major 4 times. What happens? What do you do?
Yeah, so I decided to drop out of college beginning of my junior year. I decided to drop out of college, and I'm aspiring to be a rapper, right? And so I take all of the student loan money, me and a buddy of mine, we take all the student loan money, basically put it in my bank account. I booked Greyhound ticket to, my cousin was up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he was like an independent artist, but he had already worked with a lot of the mainstream artists. So I remember calling him up, and at this time we're heavy into like Kanye, and he's making so many beats out of his story and everything. So we're like, man, we can do exactly that. And so long story short, we took that money. I dropped out of college. It was toughest time, because I had to call my mom and grandma and tell them that college was
what I was going to ask.
Yeah. And I'm first generation doing this. And they have all, and first off, my mom's like, you could have told us this 2 months ago before we just, bought this van, drove you over to the other side of the state. Like, you could have told us that you didn't really want to be there. But what was on my heart was, just because I had a degree did not mean I was going to be successful in life. Right. And I was like, man, this just isn't what I want to do. And so, they supported me, and they're like, all right, whatever. So I went to Milwaukee with my buddy. We recorded, because my cousin put us in a professional studio. So we recorded, I want to say 5 tracks. And then my thought after that was I was going to send them out to all of the biggest A&Rs at all the music record labels. So I got it to like G Unit, Def Jam, all these other places. And we heard back from a lot of those places, and it was cool, but it was like, and this is at the time when MySpace was booming, and it was like, this was like, oh man, you guys are good, but the only problem is like, when like, specifically from G Unit, there was this guy named Dre McKenzie, and I remember him responding and saying, yeah, man, you guys are good. The only problem is 50 isn't looking at signing anybody for about the next 6 months, but keep grinding, and I love to keep watching your journey. So it was a gift and a curse. It was a gift because I finally got an email. It was a curse because it was like, man, like, I thought we was going to get $1 million record deal, right? And my life was going to be changed forever at 21. And so that didn't happen. So we wound up going back. Then I started selling like t-shirts and hats out of my car, because I saw Ludacris doing it when he got his start. So I tried my hand at doing that, and I made a little bit of profit. But this was, what the funny thing about that whole part of the journey was? I had one of my best friends. He's still one of my best friends today. He was military, and he was living over in Nepal, India, right? And I remember bringing this idea to him and being like, yo, man, we're going to sell these cars. And we had this cool concept, idea, logo, everything. And he was like, well, yeah, here they make all the t-shirts in Nepal. Like, they have these big sweatshops and all these other things. And I'm like, man, you think you connect me with somebody there? And so we wound up connecting me with like one of the people who owned one of those things. And they were like, yeah, we could do it. And it was going to be like $700. But I didn't have any money. So my buddy actually loaned me the $700 and connected me with the guy. And basically I just gave him like a $250 once we sold all the shirts. I would give him a $700 back, plus like, I think it was $300. So I would give him $1,000 back, and the rest of mine would be profit. And so we did that, and I still have some of the shirts now. I didn't continue on that journey, but the reason why I tell that story is because now a lot of people are big into drop shipping and Alibaba and AliExpress and all these things in the e-com world. But I did this like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, right? When I didn't even know what it was. So I always think back to myself, if I would have just stuck on that journey, I probably would have,
Right.
it would have been crazy, because now people make tens of millions of dollars off that exact process. But yeah, that was one of my first business ventures that I tried out. And it was okay, but I just didn't stick with it. But anyway, so then to fast forward this whole thing, 6.5 years ago, I went through probably my biggest storm. And that was where we had just moved down here to Omaha, Nebraska. Now, when you ask how I got here and why I got here, my wife and I, we were always still looking for bigger opportunity, led by me, right? Because she comes from Sioux City, like big family, but they're not thinking entrepreneurship. Mom's work and dad have both worked for the same company for like 30 plus years. So that's what they do. So anyway, I was looking at it, and I was always going to move down to Kansas City, Missouri. Why? Is because it was at least just bigger. They had the Royals, they had the Chiefs. I could take CJ to games, all these other things. So it was like, all right, cool. So we were going to move down to Kansas City, but we knew nobody there. And I wound up getting a job opportunity here in Omaha. And the thing that we thought to ourselves was, we had no family in Kansas City and we had no family in Omaha. So at least let's just make sure that Omaha works. And if it's still not big enough, then, after a year or two, we can move down to Kansas City. But at least we took calculated risks rather than just jumping all crazy. So we were like, all right, we'll do that. And I had a job opportunity here. So I did that, crushed it at the job opportunity. I was an inside sales digital marketing consultant. So I was working for a Fortune 500 company at the time. They were the phone book, right? And so they were all over the country. But they had 440 sales reps, inside sales. And what they were trying to do basically was keep people from just exiting out of the phone book. And they were trying to sell you websites, SEO, SEM, all these things based off of your pain points and what you needed to accomplish right now. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I finished as number 8 in the entire company out of 440 sales reps within 9 months. And I knew nothing about digital marketing prior to this. And I'm like, all right, cool. So then what I did was I tried my hand at asking my way to management. And they're like, oh, Casanova, that's cool. But just to be honest, like, you haven't been here long enough, and like those positions aren't available. And I'm like, because they wanted me to keep doing what I was doing. I was leading all these emerging leader programs and focus groups. But I was like, look, I want to try my hand at management. And they're like, yeah, those aren't available. So that really uncovered to me that in the corporate world, everybody could tell you no, but nobody could tell you yes. Right. So I'm like, I see. So what I wound up doing was I wound up going to catch a YouTube video, because I was at home. I was just searching for another way in life. Right. And I'm like, what else can I do? And caught a YouTube video. And this guy said, you got to find a way to be the Lord of your land. Why? Is because he or she who owns the land makes the rules. And I was like, oh man, that's good. And I was like, but I don't know anything. My parents never owned house, car, business, nothing. Like, how do I be the Lord of my land? And I looked deeper into his story, and I seen that he started out as a realtor, and then he moved to investor, developer, everything else. So I was like, okay, well, look, I don't know anything about real estate or owning anything, but what I do know is I can serve other people. I can help them buy, sell, and invest. And then from there, I'll take my commissions and I'll, buy my own real estate. And so that was the path that I started out on. And my wife and I 3 months later, I get my real estate license. I just jump right in. And then my wife and I, we had just put our first house under contract that we were going to live in. We had always lived in apartments and whatnot. And so, and then I also went and got an outside sales job, because I couldn't build my real estate license in inside sales in a cubicle. I was in an 8 to 5 all day in a cubicle. And then I had my son and wife at home. So I needed to have something where I had more control over my time. So I do this. And then within that first month, my mom and grandma calls me of having the new job. My mom and grandma calls me up and they say, hey, you know what? We want to move down here to Omaha to be closer to you, Julie, and CJ. There's nothing left here in Sioux City for us. So I say, all right, cool. I talk to Julie. Within a couple weeks, we moved them down here. Well, within 24 hours of moving my mom and grandma down here, my mom winds up going to the hospital here in Omaha. Within 1 week's time, I lose my mom at that hospital. She had just turned 50. She looked really good. You would never been able to tell, but she was battling cancer as well. And so I lose my mom at that hospital. And then so I get the call that like my mom's gone, and I'm up doing a training for this new job up in Rochester, New York. Right. And I'm like, man, like so I take the first flight back. I handle all the funeral arrangements. And then my manager's like, hey, Casanova, we need you to go back out to Rochester to complete this training. And I say, with all due respect, I can't. My grandma, my son, they need me here. Like, I can't go. And so she's like, Okay, I get it, but Casanova, this is corporate. If you don't complete this training, you don't even have a territory right now. Like, we can't give you a territory if you're not gonna, complete the training. This is what everybody has to do. And I'm like, man, okay, think. I'm like, okay, well, I closed on this house that my wife and I just put under contract in 3 weeks. I was like, if you would just, and I got this real estate license, I'm just doing nothing with it. I'm like, if you would just give me 3 weeks so I can close on this house, I got my real estate license, I'll be out of your hair and you'll never have to hear from me again. So fortunately enough, I was blessed that she was like, I got you. So she allowed me to put in a 3-week notice when I didn't even have a territory. Essentially, the company was just paying me for nothing. And so I was like, oh, man. And so now I'm just praying every single day. I got to close on this house. And I'm going to bring my grandma in. We're going to live there. I'll figure it out after that. Well, we're supposed to close on this Friday. 2 days prior, which is the Wednesday, student loans comes up and underwriters want more information on these student loans, right? Because they're in deferment from the University of Iowa, because I still didn't even get my degree, right? So I just put everything in deferment, everything. So anyway, by the time they got the information that they needed, it was the following Monday. And then since this is post 2008, what happens? They go to re-verify employment and they say, as of last Friday, Casanova no longer works here. So all within a matter of 3 weeks, I lose my mom, my job, and my home. I got no family, no friends, no church group, no money. Well, what the hell am I going to do now? On top of that, not only is my wife supporting me emotionally, she's supporting me financially because I don't have a job anymore. So I was going to go back and just get another W-2 job and just work and try to figure it out. My wife's like, no, you got this real estate license. Either you're going to jump all in, you're going to make something shake, or you're always going to be wondering what if. And I'm like, man, okay. So, and long story short, I then jump all in within the next 9 months. I do 46 deals, $8 million in volume. I got the rookie of the year here in Nebraska. And, that was where my journey took off from. And now ever since then, we own multiple businesses, and it's been a fun journey.
Wow. So you sounds like you found what you're really good at, something you feel like it's kind of like your thing. Would you say that about real estate and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, real estate is a people business. That's always what I've been good at. It's no different from my podcast. It's no different from when I sold cars. It's no different from when I did digital marketing. All these things in a short amount of time, I had crazy success, right? To the point that managers, they would always love me. Like, and it's no different, even with my podcast. Being able to bring on some of the biggest names in the world of Jack Canfield and Dean Graziosi, Michael Gerber, right? All these big time personal development people and just people that have amazing stories. But why is because I've never looked at the end result. I've always thought about the people and the relationships that I could build with those people, right? And not asking for anything. When I bring people on my show all the time, they know up front, I'm not asking you for anything, because I'm not. I'm just looking to share your story. I'm looking to make impact on somebody else that if they can hear it, they're like, man, like, because of that person, that allowed me to keep going that little bit of an extra mile, right? And to just not give up. And because of that, look at where I am today. And so when you ask, is real estate my thing? I would say yes and no, right? Real estate has always been my what and my how, at least up until this point over these last 6 years. It's what I've done and how I've, built the life that I've built by my design. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's been my why, because at the end of the day, why I get up every single morning is to be able to inspire somebody to live a life and by their design, and to really just go out there and base their life on their dream, right? So I believe that everything starts with the dream, and those of us who dare to continue to dream while the rest of the world will settle for what society will tell us or deem is our reality, we're the ones who stand to be trailblazers, change makers, pioneers, and ultimately we make this world a better place. And so that's what it's always been for me. So yes and no. I mean, people always ask me all the time about real estate, but I would tell you the crazy thing that most people don't know, and especially hearing this, they think that I'm all real estate and whatnot. And I still am an active agent. I'm an active investor. My wife and I, we have a portfolio. Don't get me wrong, I flip houses, but I geek out just as much over funnels, like ClickFunnels and search engine marketing, like you wouldn't expect it, like the tech world, the whole thing. So I would definitely say that I'm somebody that I love when people ask me, and I'll share this really quick in hopes that it could help someone else as well. But people always ask me, what are my keys to success? And it kind of goes to like figuring out what my thing was. Well, I've always thought that there's three keys to my success and anyone's success. Number one is the energy. We talked about that a couple different times. The energy. What's the energy that I can bring into every conversation, into every room, onto every podcast, and to every person that I have the ability to touch on a daily basis, right? What's that energy? Number two is the environment. For me, I've always tried to focus on putting myself in an environment that would continuously not only uplift me, but at the same time that would challenge me. Because a lot of the times, just like you said, you have to watch who you tell these things to. And one of the things that a mentor once told me is the quickest way to kill a dream is to introduce it to a small mind. Right? I say again, the quickest way to kill a dream is to introduce it to a small mind. And we have to watch, we have to protect, again, our energy. And I made a video on this because it was so in my heart. And it was a video that it just really dials it all in. But anyway, so number two is your environment. Watch your environment. This is very important because that environment is, they say that you are the sum of the 5 people who you surround yourself with the most, right? If you look at all 5 of those people and their bank accounts, I'm sure that your bank account is probably within 10% of it, whether it's good or bad, right? You're surrounding yourself with high-level coaches. Most likely, you're going to be able to have the tendencies and the habits of a high-level coach, right? If you're surrounding yourself with a low-level plumber, probably what's going to happen. You're going to find yourself calling in every day. You can't follow up with your leads. Your business isn't working. So watch that. But more importantly, it's more about who you become with being around those people, right? Who does that make you become? Because if you have any type of pride, which we all do, we're going to know that we don't want to be the weakest link in our circle. We don't want to be the person that's continuously being a bottom feeder or feeling like a crap in a barrel because somebody else will tell you what they've just done. And you're like, man, let me pull them back down because I haven't done it. So it's going to force you to be able to become that person who you're trying to be in that environment with, right? Your habits, your tendencies, your mindset, all those different things. And then the last thing is exposure. I feel like the reason why I've been able to do so many things, and you brought up Gary Vee. What's funny is I was in a Clubhouse room this morning where he was talking about this, and it really resonated with me. But somebody had asked the question. They said, you know what? I'm multi-passionate. And I feel like I have a lot of passions just like you, but I always get told like you have to focus on the one thing, right? You got to do that one thing. And Gary, his response, I felt like he was talking to me and he was like, the reason why people tell you to focus on that one thing is because that's the way that they're wired, right? And understand this is another thing that I told another buddy of mine. It was like, when you look at why a lot of people do focus on the one thing, is because of the fact that when you go do something else, you have to understand that most of the time, if not all of the time, you're starting over from scratch. If you're all of a sudden going to now build a digital marketing company, or you're now all of a sudden going to now become a coach, you have to start over from scratch and you have to build it from scratch. You have to now go lick your wounds all over again, no matter what the success that you've had. You now have to create those testimonials. You have to now create a success plan, all these different things. And most people don't want to start over because it was too painful to even get this one thing off the ground. Then now to say that I'm going to do 5, 6, 7 things, it's like, So most people, they will tell you to stay away from that, even though that might be what you're wired to do. So you really have to watch, again, when you're going to seek a mentor, if you're trying to find your thing and you're looking at, okay, well, who are the people that have already done what I'm trying to do? Watch who you take the advice from, because if they're not there where if you say, hey, I want to be a holistic businessman, well, that also means that you have to have some type of knowledge of where family plays in that as well when you talk about holistic. Right? So is the person who you're taking knowledge from, do they have a wife and kids or a husband and kids, right? And they have found time that I don't know if you can ever truly have balance, but they can find time to have harmony, right? The communication is there, because when you talk about balance, for me, it's always been, that means you have to give up something, right? Because you have something up here and you have to take away from that to then be able to put on to here to balance them out. Right. And most of the time, especially in the world of spouses where both spouses are trying to be entrepreneurs, right, or something of the sort, there's so much fast running there that you can't tell me that we want to run fast together if you got to take away from what I'm already doing. And that means you're not just going to put more on your plate. And so that's a whole nother conversation. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that, but I would say figure out how you can harmonize it. And a lot of the times that harmony just comes with communication and talking about what your vision is, the why behind why you're trying to do what you're trying to do. What's the story behind it? Because if you can get whoever that partner, that spouse, that investor is on why you're doing what you're doing, a lot of the times that communication will be all you need to get it off the ground. And that could even mean just getting your first client.
Yeah, I like the word harmony. I like congruency, finding a way to make all of these things mesh and work together.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's even integrating your family into your business and involving them more instead of, like you said, having to suppress one to lift, bring another one up more. I'm definitely multi-passionate. I've been told multiple times that I need to stop starting new things and focus on more. And I have billions of things going on, but I kind of, run well that way. Like I like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of encouraging to hear that. I liked that you talked about that. I was wondering if you liked Clubhouse. I don't know if I probably follow you on there, but I've never been in a room with you, I don't think yet.
Not
Um,
yet. Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. I'm on
I'll
there.
have to look for you. I have to make sure that I follow you. Um, yeah, it gets to be so much with all this social media. It's hard to keep up with everything. It's hard. How do you wh- when you start to feel overwhelmed with, feeling that pressure to keep your exposure, to have a presence, nurture those relationships, market here, do this, run this podcast here, create content over here. What do you do personally to make sure that you're not just feeling so overwhelmed that you lose sight?
Yeah, great question. So I think the first thing that you have to do is you have to assess what's going to be the most impactful for you. And that really means what exactly are you trying to accomplish here? For some people, they're really just trying to sell more products, which is totally fine. There's nothing negative or wrong about that. So are you doing revenue generating activities to be able to sell more products? For other people, they say, hey, I don't need to sell more products. I'm just trying to get my brand identity out there. So for you, that then means, okay, well, where do you think that your customer is? And so I could go deep into all of that, but to answer your question more specifically and kind of pass it back, what I do is I figured out that I needed to gain more generalists rather than soldiers, right? Because I am somebody where I'm multifaceted. I have 2 podcasts that release 3 episodes per week. And we have to because we have sponsors. So we release Monday, Wednesday, Friday. One is the DreamNation. The other one is DreamNation Real Estate. So I know that. But then I'm also a full-time real estate agent. So I have clients that reach out to me and say, hey, I want to see houses. I'm also a real estate investor. And because we flipped houses, my wife is always kind of in my ear of like, did you see this house? Have you been looking? Like, obviously we know what we can do there. My wife and I, we also have a daycare center, which we started that 15 months ago. That's her passion, her baby, right? So we have a daycare center, 7,500 square feet. We took it from 0 to 70 kids within 15 months. Then the pandemic hit, took us back down to 28. Now we're back up to 60. But I handle all the marketing with my agency behind that. She just does what she loves to do, and I'm her marketing partner behind it. And so that's aside from me speaking and doing other people's shows and everything else. So for me, time is definitely a precious commodity. I also coach my son in basketball. We only play tournaments, but so I'm very, very active in both of my kids' life. So it really became, in the beginning, I had to ask myself, what was I trying to accomplish here? Like something that I'll do, I will not do. It's very hard pressed. I wouldn't say I won't do it, but it's very hard pressed to get me to do anything past 5:30 Central Time. Why is because I know that I run so hard during my day, right? That for me, it's tough to I'm not able to be present at 7:30 at night with my family if all of a sudden I know that I'm gearing up for a Zoom meeting or coaching or whatever else. Now I understand that you all got to make sacrifices, but again, it's figuring out what exactly do I want. So I go back and what I did was I created brand industry people, right? Because that's where I figured out where my gift really was. So prime example is my wife. She only wants to deal with daycares, families, children. Like that's her lane. She has her blinders on. If she had to live the life that I had to live, even though she kind of does, she would go insane. That's just not her lane. That's not what she wants to do. And so for me, it was figuring out how exactly I could find more people that wanted to operate in that one lane, and then allow them to go deep, and then just to be able to leverage each other. And so that's what I've been able to do. I have people that manage my social media for me. I have people who manage my websites and everything. But in the beginning, I started off doing everything myself. And then I went through a struggle of hiring a whole bunch of technicians. But the problem with hiring a whole bunch of technicians that I found, for me particularly, was they could all do the work, but they couldn't understand how to take it deeper, right? So like they would do, they're task takers. So they would do exactly the task that you had, but you're like, okay, well, how are we going to evolve this? And they're like, well, I don't know. How do you want to evolve? So that was where it was like, okay, well, I got to figure this thing out. So then what I did was I flipped it, and I wanted to, like, basically, if I wanted to start a digital marketing agency, I needed somebody who was willing to go through the trenches in it. And it was kind of like, okay, would I rather have 50% of something that generates 10 million, or would I rather have 100% of something that generates 500,000 or 1 million, right? So you think about those types of things, that you don't have to be the end all be all. And if you're like, oh, well, think about what Jeff Bezos does, right? Like Jeff Bezos, all of these different products, what he did was he created a platform that everyone could win on. He didn't focus on himself. Now you got people that's doing Amazon FBA. You got people that are drop shipping, private labeling, white labeling, all these other things. And everybody, and the same thing with Walmart. It wasn't about, like, they created, same thing with Costco, right? When you think about a big box store or anything like that, right? They found ways that everybody can win on it. Same thing could be said about Facebook. They didn't just create the platform for themselves. They found a way to be able to let people of every genre, they all want to advertise on Facebook. They all want their type of Facebook group. They just created products that everybody could win on. And so that's what I would tell somebody else. And that was the thing that was helpful for me, is I started shifting it to, like, I don't have to be the end all be all. How can someone else win within my umbrella, which for me, it's DreamNation? How could someone else win through that? Maybe it's their coaching, right? They don't know how to go get their clients or something like that. Or maybe they just don't have the leverage or anything else, so they use the name. They use the other parts of the system to be able to win from it. So that's been a big key for me.
That's incredible. I gained a lot from that. I hope the listeners did too. I need more of that in my life. So man, we can learn so much from you. I feel like I follow you on Instagram. I need to make sure that I'm actually the algorithm is sending your stuff into my feed, because you are very inspiring, super hard worker, but you've come from, like you said, no college degree, no direction, not sure what you wanted to do, to doing a lot. Like, you are doing a lot. And I find that so exciting, because we're cut from the same mold. So I've learned so much. If our listeners today want to get some more exposure to you, where do they find you? And where would you direct them?
Yeah, so the number one place I would say to find me is at DreamNation.com. Through there, that's the community that we've been building for these last 6 months, and we'll continue to build this heavy. That's where both of my podcasts lie. That's where my blogs lie. You could also find me at Casanova Brooks, or even on social media. I am very accessible. I do try to check all of my stuff, but I get a lot of DMs. I get a lot of things. And the podcast has just been phenomenal. I can't wait to have you on the show, but the podcast has just been phenomenal. So that's where I spend a lot of my time. And then obviously cross-promoting and trying to give value to other people's audiences. But yeah, DreamNation is where you can find everything about me. And if you're looking to join the community, that's where I would say you can find us at.
That's awesome. Before we close, I would want to ask you, what do you want people that are listening to this, maybe hearing you for the first time, what would you want them to walk away with most after listening to your story and your journey?
Yeah. So I would say that your future is brighter than ever. We live in a time right now that you can literally create income out of thin air, right? You could literally say, hey guys, I'm thinking about putting a class together for photography. I just want to see if there's any interest. I've learned so much from, and this could be true, because if you get onto YouTube and you learn from people who are generating $1 million a year in photography, and you now have a system approach of what you've learned from those videos, which could only took 1 day, 1 week, 1 year, however, and you say, I've been able to learn from some of the biggest mentors that have generated tens of millions of dollars on how to do X, how to do Y, how to do Z, and here's what it can mean for you if you do X, Y, and Z. I just want to see if there's any interest in a class like this, and then kind of see where we go from there. If you do think that you would be interested in something like this, send me a DM and we'll talk about what it would cost, right? So you're already telling them up front, there is an investment, and maybe you even put in parentheses, the cost will be very minimal. Because this is the first time that I'm doing this. Maybe you put that in parentheses. So then they know that it's a cost, but then they're not afraid to say, oh my God, like, because they're like, well, what's minimal? So they're curious. And then all of a sudden, maybe you only charge $99 for that, but you get 20 people that then say, yeah, I would love to do it. $100 times 20, you just created $2,000 out of thin air. So it's to understand that your future is brighter than ever. And you know, something I've always said to myself is joy wouldn't feel so good if it wasn't for pain. Obviously, I've experienced a lot of pain. I've experienced a lot of adversity in my life, but at the same time, it's allowed me to sit back and smile and to understand that character is built through adversity, right? Same way, we're all under pressure every single day, but pressure busts pipes. At the same time, pressure creates diamonds. So you have to ask yourself, are you a busted pipe or are you a beautiful diamond? 99% of us would say, hey, I'm a beautiful diamond. Maybe I'm a great seed. I'm just in bad soil. So I just got to change my environment. So that's what I would say to someone.
Your future is brighter than ever. I think so many people need to hear that, especially coming out of last year and the way people are feeling about it. And that is a great way to end this show today. I would encourage anyone listening to this, if you are aspiring to do more, if you want to be more and you don't know what to do, you guys got to follow this guy, reach out to him. Very, very inspiring. And I appreciate so much you coming. I know you're busy, and for you to come and take this time with me is so valuable for me and for those listening. Thank you, Casanova, so very much for that.
Thank you for having me, Mel.
Absolutely. I can't wait to be on yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much. If you enjoyed this episode of the Beautifully Restored podcast, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Check out my website link that I've included in the show notes to sign up for some free stuff and stay up to date on my blog and special offers. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.